Hello Team FD and welcome back to Winners and Losers, where we break down the latest and greatest results from the World Cup. And I've got to say, I think we've just witnessed the most exciting 20 minutes of Qatar 2022 so far. I mean, 65, 70 minutes into this game, we thought we were going to be talking about another, not bore draw, because Ronaldo had scored a penalty by then, but a low-scoring, attritional affair. And here we are, all pumped up, all jacked up on World Cup juice. Now, let me give you some context, McCubs, before I throw over to you to discuss a game of 4 quarters, 3 of them being terrible. Now, Ghana came into this fixture as the lowest-ranked team in the World Cup, 61st. Yeah, and 4 of the 5 African teams had failed to score in their opening games. So basically, despite losing, I want to open the show by saying Ghana stepped up and delivered some entertainment. Let's rewind. Let's talk about this game from the beginning before I get too carried away, which is very close to happening right now. Talk to me about that first half.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you say, the African teams I think have been a little bit disappointing so far. I think Senegal were a bit unfortunate not to get that draw with the Netherlands. I think Cameroon earlier as well could have got a result against Switzerland had their finishing been better. But I mean, it seemed like it was going to go a similar way for Ghana today. I mean, that first half, Portugal just had all of the ball. I think 70%. In the first half. It became a lot more even in the second. I think Portugal's possession came down to around 52% in the second half. But yeah, Ghana weren't really offering anything. But at the same time, Portugal weren't really taking advantage of it. I mean, they had 7 shots, but a lot of those came from range. They did have 2 big chances. Ronaldo missed that sitter at the back post. I say sitter, he does very well to get up there. But given Ronaldo's aerial ability that he has retained even now, you do expect him to put that away. He also had that disallowed goal, which was potentially a little bit harsh. But generally speaking, they weren't really breaking into the box. Ghana only had to complete 4 tackles in that first half, and it didn't feel like, it didn't really.
It was hardly last gasp stuff.
No, it was just lots of sideways passes. Ghana didn't really need to come out of their shape, really.
No.
And I think in some ways, that was the best way to go about things because there was so much more energy in the second half. They kind of forced Santos to play his hand in that sense. But yeah, they were just happy to deploy that deep block. They were happy to kind of commit the odd tactical foul here and there. But yeah, generally speaking, there was nothing really of note going on in that first half. But yeah, like I said, it just completely came alive after 60 minutes.
They were getting under Portugal's skin, weren't they? And I also noted the tactical fouling that was taking place as well. 7 of them by half-time. And only 31 passes completed in the final third. So yeah, paints a picture, doesn't it? I think Ayew only completed 6 passes in the first half as well. And Ghana were happy to lump it long when they did get the ball, weren't they? Reflected by the fact that Portugal actually won 10 headers in the first half. That's the only defending of note they had to do, right? But let's move into the second half because the game changes on the 62nd minute mark. And this came after Ghana actually had a few promising breaks. It looked like when they won the ball in midfield that Portugal was struggling to defend in transition. They were breaking at pace, weren't they? Kudus doing a lot of damage as well. But then your man Cristiano uses his nous, his experience. He gives it the old Harry Kane arch and wins the penalty.
Yeah.
Firstly, did you think it was a penalty? I myself thought it was extremely harsh. If that's not given, I don't even think it's a talking point.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is a penalty at all. I think, looking at it, I think Ronaldo gets to the ball first, but then at that point, no contact has been made from Salisu. And then Salisu does win the ball. So it's one of those, I don't know, it's just one of those ones where clearly they just didn't think it was that big a mistake. Or they just, I don't know, maybe it's the Ronaldo effect and they're just like, well, we're just going to give it to him. We can't, that seems really unprofessional. I don't mean it like that, but I just think, sometimes the profile of a player can play a role in those things.
His ability to win them as well.
Yeah.
I don't think many forwards have the IQ to win a penalty from that situation, and he is one of them. Him, Kane, Vardy. This is a trait we see in a lot of cutthroat top-end strikers, and he's made the most of it almost to an artistic degree.
I must admit, though, I do think, there was a bit of balance here, right, in terms of mistakes. I think Seydou, maybe, was it 6 minutes later, is quite lucky to stay on the pitch after, what was it, on Joao Felix, what is kind of like, felt like a head scrape, not a head butt. But
he's in the grey area.
Yeah, I feel like I was surprised he didn't get sent off. So I don't think Ghana were like overly hard done by in terms of refereeing decisions. But yeah, not a penalty for me. But nevertheless, I mean, he puts it away, doesn't he? And the floodgates open after that.
We've ticked the penalty off. I want to talk about Kudus. I want to talk a little bit about how Portugal were so negative after going ahead, and watching them for a full 90, you can understand the angst. Around Fernando Santos' approach from Portuguese fans, can't you? It's really prevalent. But yes, let's put some shine on Kudus first, because I thought he was really threatening in this game. He gave it some big licks pre-match, putting himself on par with Neymar. I hope that was tongue-in-cheek. I'm sure it was. But 2 shots in this game, 4 dribbles with a 100% success rate. That was the most in the game, you'd be unsurprised to hear. And he put in the hard yards as well. 6 out of his 8 ground duels won. He started to tire because he was doing both aspects of the game. He was obviously then taken off after 77 minutes, was a hugely influential figure in Andre Ayew's goal. Anyway, let's move on from Kudus and talk about Portugal's negative approach after the game then, the Cubs, because they didn't have a shot for 13 minutes after they went ahead.
Yeah, not great. I mean, I think, they were fairly negative throughout the game, and, this is something that Fernando Santos has been criticised about before. Rafael Leao didn't start and, didn't come on until 76 minutes, and then we really started to see them break. I think they were helped a bit by Ghana's approach as well. I think it was more just that, Ghana really started to take the game to them at 1-0 down. I think it seemed to be always the plan, was that if, they'd try and hold on for as long as possible, and then when Portugal go ahead, or if Portugal go ahead, those last 20 minutes, or if it's level last 20 minutes, then Ghana would start to really bring the game to them. And Kudus was at the centre of that. Kudus set up the goal for Andre Ayew, did well to get him behind, and I think that Portugal defence in general, in hindsight, I think Ghana might be kicking themselves a little bit, because that, Cancelo and Diaz in there too, world-renowned defenders, but the general makeup of that back line, or at least that back line, they just looked vulnerable the entire game.
Down that right side in particular, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, especially how Kudus got through for the Ayew goal. So yeah, I mean, I think they kind of got lucky that Andre Ayew got taken off when he did, just after scoring, because then I think there was a little bit of destabilisation within the Ghana ranks. Suddenly they looked a lot more open, a lot more vulnerable to the break, and that's how the two following goals from Joao Felix and Rafael Leao, who'd come on by this point, occurred, and both brilliantly set up by Bruno Fernandes, who I think probably was Portugal's best player on the night.
Yeah, thank God Leao eventually came on. We were absolutely pining for it from the get-go, it's got to be said, in the FD office. I'm sure we'll be seeing him start sometime soon, although Santos is very prickly, very stubborn, isn't he, it would seem. And when he did make some changes in this game, the triple substitution at 89 minutes, it did seem to upset the balance in the same way Otto's double substitution did, that you mentioned probably 20 minutes prior, and obviously gave Ghana new life. And in that 9 minutes of extra time, Inaki Williams.
Oh, man.
Oh, it could have been moment of the World Cup. But we'll let him off, won't we? Because he put in a big old shift. And I'm sure Manchester United target Diogo Costa extremely grateful to see him eating turf in the dying embers of that game. Now let's talk about my man of the match. And feel free to step in if your opinion differs. I've gone for Bruno Fernandes. Okay, now he started this game at the tip of a diamond. Didn't really feel like that formation worked for large parts of the fixture. Dropped back a little bit, didn't he, in the second half. Started pulling the strings. Magnificent assist for Felix. Also a great pass for Rafael Leao, it's got to be said. He waited until just the right time. We thought it was a little bit late. He wasn't. Timed it to perfection. So yeah, 2 great assists in this game. 3 chances created in total. 8 passes into the final third. I haven't looked, but that is probably a team high, you'd imagine. And did the hard yards as well. 4 out of 5 ground duels won. 4 fouls won. 4 ball recoveries. Which shows you in itself that Portugal didn't have it all their own way in the second half. Here's their number 10, almost advanced forward, having to put in, a real defensive shift to keep his team in the game. Do you have any other noteworthy performances you wanted to throw out there, or should we move on?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about Kudus before, haven't we? Yeah, I think Bruno really did stand out in that Portugal midfield. I think Paulinho, when he came on, was pretty influential as well in terms of breaking up Ghana's play when they were trying to break. But yeah, it's hard to look past Bruno really from a Portugal perspective, I'd say. Bukari, I think, was pretty lively when he came on as well, and obviously did the Sue celebration when he headed in, and that would have been iconic. Imagine that if this game had ended 3-3, we would have been watching his Sue celebration and Iñaki Williams taking the ball off Diogo Costa for years to come. It really would have been all-time classic World Cup moment, almost up there with the roly-poly throw-in from 2018. But yeah, it wasn't to be. But yeah, I do want to shout out Bukari because I did think he looked bright coming on, and 2 minutes before the end, trying that shot from quite wide and about 20 yards out. You could feel that he wanted to be the hero, and it didn't quite work out for him. But I thought he did impress, especially considering he came on instead of Sulemana Esahuku, I think. Sorry, I've butchered his name. Who's the bright young hope of Ghanaian football, also left on the bench. So there's a lot of competition in the wide forward areas for Ghana. So I think in terms of putting out his stall for starting the next game, he did himself did himself proud. Yeah,
it's not just the quantity of talent either, is it? It is the mindset of all of them. There is a general fearlessness in this Ghanaian camp that is really impressive, and I hope that more of these youngsters leave their mark in this group stage the further we progress in it. Now, before we move on to Ronaldo, I do just want to say, and I want to garner the opinion of people back home, that I think had they been a little bit more cutthroat in that second half, they probably could have left with a point. I think expected goals from open play had it 0.8 to 0.7, which seems low, but I'm sure they had their reasons for that. And I think ultimately, Fernando Santos doesn't get the chance to rectify things or make those in-game tweaks or come away with 3 points even against bigger and better sides. And I do think his conservative or negative approach is going to hinder them further on in the competition. Obviously, we've seen them win the Euros with these tactics, but the big teams this year are just bang at it and so impressive in attack that they could be blown away, before the hour mark and just be trailing and find it really difficult to call themselves back into games. But Portugal fans, do you harbour, big aspirations after that result, or are you a little bit reserved? Are you asking more questions as a result of it? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll hit you back up in the first hour. Let's wrap up the show then with a bit on Ronaldo, because a lot of chatter about what club he's going to next, and I want to hear your feelings on it as a Manchester United fan as well. So, firstly, how did you feel when the news came out? Secondly, where did you see him heading?
Well, I mean, mightily relieved for the first question. I thought that this might be a saga that was going to potentially drag on until January. I think it's, generally a great result from a United's perspective in terms of not having to pay off the rest of that contract. Terminating it by mutual consent is, and I think from a Ronaldo's perspective as well, for the saga to just be kind of done and dusted and he can focus on what he wants to do next, I think is probably, what he wanted essentially as well. So yeah, I think, I'm pretty happy, all things considered, from a United fan's perspective. As for where he goes next, it's hard to know, isn't it? I mean, I actually thought he kind of grew into this game a bit. Obviously, the penalty was slightly fortuitous, but a great penalty, took that really well. I think going back to the game very quickly, I do think with Leao, there were positions that Ronaldo was taking up, kind of left half space and whatnot, where I just think if Leao's there, Portugal look much more dangerous, rather than having Ronaldo kind of trying kind of things that he just can't really pull off anymore.
You're thinking about that little chop back in where
I
think
just think Leao is just one of the most dangerous players in world football in those areas right now. So I do think they should start him. It feels a little bit like England at the last Euros when Bukayo Saka just couldn't quite get that starting role, and it was just like that attack just looked so much better with him in it. Kind of feel like Leao could have that effect on this Portugal front line. But as for Ronaldo, where he goes next, well, it's hard to tell, isn't it, really, because no real big clubs aside from Chelsea in the summer looked likely to really make a move for him. But we have had reports this afternoon that Saudi Arabian side Al Hilal are exploring a deal to sign him. Apparently United actually received an offer from Al Hilal in the summer for Ronaldo, but the deal fell through. Apparently Ronaldo said that he rejected the move. That deal was apparently worth around £300 million, which I'm assuming all in wages, right? Or majority in wages. Apparently if Al Hilal can get a deal done, then they will listen to offers for their striker Odion Ighalo. So we could have a heroic return to Old Trafford for Ighalo if that were to happen. Very unlikely, but his contract's up in the summer apparently. So that is the latest on Ronaldo. But I mean, this is only the first in a long line of rumours and reports that I think we're going to see over the next few weeks. I think if I was Ronaldo, I'd probably want to just go back to Sporting if I could. If there was some sort of deal available, take a huge pay cut and see out the rest of his career, in a familiar surrounding, in a somewhere where he still has a lot of affection for him. But
it does feel like he wants to consolidate his Champions League record as well. If there's an opportunity to score 3 or 4 more goals in a Champions League season, to be fair to him, he does feel like the sort of guy that would forego a massive payday in order to facilitate that. So I also agree that I think Sporting would be like the most amicable destination and the nicest end to his career. You don't want him to sort of disappear off into oil-laden mediocrity, but that's just us. Yeah. I mean, where would you lot want to see him? At home? Let us know in the comments below. And that is the show for Portugal versus Ghana. Wow, I'm actually a little bit tired after that. That was a whirlwind of emotions. But stay tuned on EFD because the boys are going to be reporting on the Brazil versus Serbia match. I'm very excited about that 90. Like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on if you're new around here. Hello, by the way. And we'll catch you next time.